So for the first video in the energy topic, we'll look at all the different kinds of energy stores and the ways of getting between those energy stores. So we'll start with thermal. So anything that has a temperature has a certain amount of thermal energy in it. Okay, so that's thermal energy. So energy stored as heat energy inside the object. Okay, kinetic energy. So anything that is moving has kinetic energy. Okay, so a car, for example, moving along a road has kinetic energy. The car will come to a stop eventually because some of that kinetic energy will be drained away by the force of friction between the tyres and the road. We've got chemical energy, so energy that's stored in chemical bonds between atoms. Okay, so inside some molecules, for example, you've got chemical bonds. There's energy stored in those bonds. So by rearranging those atoms some way, by doing a chemical reaction, you might release some of that energy in what would be called an exothermic reaction. So that's chemical energy, chemical energy stored in chemical bonds. Okay, so gravitational potential energy is the next one. Gravitational potential energy is just anything that is stored above the ground. Okay, so things that are stored at a height. So we've got electrostatic energy stores as well. So if you've got two charges, for example, so positive and a negative charge, for example, will want to come together. So if you store them at a distance from each other, then you're going to put energy in there. You're going to store energy between them. That's electrostatic. We've got magnetic. Pretty much similar to electrostatic. If you've got two magnets that are near each other, they'll want to be attracted to each other. If you pull them apart, then you're going to store some energy by doing that. We're going to look at elastic potential. So if you stretch something, for example, a bow and arrow, if you stretch the bow and arrow, then it's going to want to ping back. Yeah, so you're storing energy in the bow and arrow. If you were to stretch a rubber band, for example, then you're going to store energy in the rubber band. If you were to compress a spring, then you are going to store energy in that spring. That's called elastic potential energy. And nuclear. Just like chemical energy stores are energy stored in the bonds between atoms, so nuclear energy is the energy stored in the bonds between protons and neutrons in the nucleus of the atom, hence the name nuclear energy. So energy stored between the protons and neutrons, energy stored between the nucleons, the middle bit of the atom. Okay, so that's our energy stores. All of these ways, all of these things are ways of storing energy, or ways that objects have energy. Okay, they have the energy in these stores. Okay, now we're going to look at some energy shifts or energy transfers. How do we get between those energy stores? Well, one of the ways you can get between them is by doing what's called work on them. Okay, now work actually, I would say, deserves its own video, so I will do a video on work as well, and it ties in quite nicely with the forces topic as well, work. So you can transfer energy mechanically between the stores, okay, and by that I mean exerting a force on it. Okay, so you can shift things mechanically. When I say mechanically, so that means a force is doing work, or a force is being applied to that object. Okay, so for example, if I was to take a box and I was to push it, I'm transferring energy mechanically into the box's kinetic energy store because it's moving, and the surrounding thermal energy store because of friction between the box and whatever surface it's on. You can also transfer energy electrically. Okay, so electrical components can transfer energy electrically. When we talk about electrically, we're doing work done by moving charges. Heating something. So for example, if you've got a water boiler, or let's say a kettle, for example, then the kettle will be transferring energy electrically into the thermal energy store of the kettle's heating element, which will then transfer energy by heating into thermal energy stores of the water in the kettle. Okay, so that's heating. And radiation, finally. Okay, so radiation covers things like electromagnetic radiation, so for example light. Also it covers sound as well. Okay, so radiation, so this is electromagnetic radiation and sound. Okay, an example, the most obvious example of electromagnetic radiation would be light. Okay, and these are energy shifts or energy transfers. So as I said before as well, by transferring energy, you are doing work. And I think work actually does deserve its own video, so I will do a video on work as well, a separate video. It might not be too long, but it will be a separate video. Right, I will see you then.